Hello and welcome to the 18th Annual Littleton Economic Development Celebration. I would now like to introduce the Littleton Board of Selectmen to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand up here with you.
You guys have the pledge? We're going to address this flag here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God. Just enjoy. Thank you. This isn't the Chamber's annual dinner, so I'm not going to bore with you an update of everything that we've been up to. Hopefully, you've been reading the papers, watching Channel 2. We've been doing a lot, but this is not what that's for. This is for celebrating economic development. As you read in your program and here tonight, economic development in Littleton is chugging along, no matter what the media may choose to portray. It may not have the volume of past years, but rest assured, the American entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in Littleton. Various groups, such as state and town officials, LIDC, the Chamber, and several others are collaborating to ensure the survival and growth of the area economy. 18 years ago, leaders were collaborating just as they are now on what to do with our local economy. Unemployment was high, and with 20% storefronts vacant on Main Street, let's just say there were plenty of opportunities to bring your business to town. From this collaborative group of leaders grew the resurgence of the Economic Development Task Force, which developed and implemented a plan to put Littleton on a track to success, and they followed through with it. From their work came projects such as Littleton Main Street Incorporated and a vision for a downtown community. Storefronts were filled with anchor tenants, and this little thing called the Meadow was born. One of the first things accomplished, and perhaps longest lasting, is this actual event. Not only was there a need to promote ourselves to the outside world, but we had to promote ourselves to ourselves. Opportunity wasn't lacking. Ideas weren't lacking. It was confidence. Just like the first guy at the middle school dance to go over to the side of the gym where all the girls were, this event was just what we needed to break the ice and start the ball rolling. Now, fast forward 18 years, and we are ready once again for leaders to get together and move this community forward in a unified effort. Yes, we are in another recession, but the challenges and opportunities are new and exciting, and our community leaders are ready to take them on, what comes our way. We have retained the services of Preston Gilbert. Preston, Preston's over there. For those of you who do not know Preston, he's formerly of North Country Councilor and was the facilitator the last time the Economic Development Task Force met. And we are very excited to have Preston along board with us and leading this collaboration for Littleton 2020. As with any Littleton project, this will not be done by the work of a few, but by the help and collaboration of many. There will be several public meetings and volunteer opportunities within this task, and participation from the business community and the greater Littleton community is not only encouraged, but it is vital to the success of this program. Only by representation of all and coming together for the good of all can we achieve the greatness we have come to enjoy and expect from our amazing town. Now, I'd like to introduce Neil Stafford, past president of the Chamber of Commerce, and the reason we're standing here today in this beautiful building with this beautiful new office. Neil.
Thank you, Chad. I'm thrilled to see all of you here today. I had tried to lower our expectations. We figured if we got 25 people, it'd be a good event. This is fantastic. There's a tremendous opportunity present in this building. I hope that rather than attending a selectmen's meeting, you'll come here and give of your time, because eventually our dream, our vision is to make this back into what it once was and what it can be again. And in this community, we'd also like to do the same thing. There was a time, I talked with Preston for a while this morning, back in 1990, when Littleton was roundly reviewed as a can-do community. I think we've lost that, but I think the opportunity is here to get it back. As we go through with the development of the Opera House, many of you will find in your mailbox tomorrow or the day after a letter from me asking you to join me in contributing to the new office, which I hope all of you will see. The new Littleton Chamber of Commerce, Littleton Regional Chamber of Commerce office is to the left as you go out of this door. It is a beautiful place. It also will serve as our welcome center going forward, and it's a great opportunity to introduce people to the community, to our retail sector, professional sector, industrial, et cetera. That's the first phase. There are other phases which include this venue, which even now I believe is a gorgeous place to come. Over time, our intent is to continue, hopefully mostly without taxpayer assistance, and we've had precious little to improve this back to the level where it should be. But we have had some performances. We will have some additional performances going forward. The Historical Society is in, and they will talk. They can praise themselves very well. They are a fantastic, I guess it's not an addition, but a revitalization, part of the revitalization with the Chamber of Commerce. Once this venue is developed, we also have what many of you may remember as the old courthouse. That our hope is to develop into a multimedia conference room available for the use of the business sector in town. So it's a very exciting time. It's going to be a slow process, which is fine. We really are better off without getting taxpayer money involved. We'll take it slow, we'll get there, but I think the progress is readily apparent, and hopefully you'll support us in our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, and I'd like to thank Neil also for all of his work on this very important project, restoring and rejuvenating the Opera House here to be the anchor of Main Street. It's been a lot of work to get through. I hope everyone takes the tour to go through our Welcome Center, everything we've done. We've had a lot to do. A lot of it has been volunteering, particularly in this room, as well to spiff this up. Prior to our first event this spring, we had to do a lot of work with just dusting, cleaning, and painting behind the back wall there, which we had a three-story staging from the high school, and I had my 10-year-old son up there helping me paint, and Chad asked if I was afraid of OSHA finding out, and I said not so much as his mother finding out, but thankfully she's not. It's not on, is it, Bob? Okay. Actually, I'm here to talk about beautification, and we've changed the format of this meeting this year to be more interactive, to give us more time here on Main Street and to talk amongst each other. But we are going to stick to the discipline that Brian has instilled on the brevity of our comments. So I'll stop rambling now and get to my point. Beautification. A year ago this month, Jeff Corey and his crew put the street lights up, and we really saw how this was bringing the whole project together. We had a few punch list items for Northeast Earth Movers to come in this spring and finish up, but we got through that. And since then, we've been raising money for the beautification, and to date, we've brought the new trash cans out all up and down Main Street, and today, Jeff, again, and his crew finished putting up the flags that we've purchased for each of the 22 poles. They're up for Veterans Day, and they'll be up for another week or so, and then in about a week's time, we'll be putting up our Christmas wreaths. Nigel Manley is very generously supporting us with some wreaths, so we'll have wreaths, garlands, lights going up in about a week to 10 days' time. After that, in the spring, we'll be putting planters up. There's been the issue that we've talked with greenery, trees, whatever. The planters we'll be putting up will be on each pole. They'll have 2 planters that'll go on either side. And we hope that'll bring some greenery in to help soften the look. And in addition to that, we'll be working on signage and several other smaller projects. Thank you.
Bob Butson here? Any chance? No? Unfortunately, Bob apparently could not be here. He is a great internship program, which hopefully he'll be getting through the media. But he's gotten a significant grant to help with businesses with hiring interns or bringing interns on through the school system and partnering with them. Now I'd like to introduce Brian Ward to give us our update on economic development.
18 years ago when we got started, as many of you know, the venue was to have everyone talk to 2 to 3 minutes, and that was a tough thing to enforce. The idea was that you in the audience would much rather hear from them than from me. Well, the Chamber have given me an opportunity to prove that I was right, that after I do my presentation, you really wish you had heard from them. This is going to be somewhat of a similar presentation as they do on ESPN with the fastest 10 minutes of football. I've been given instructions to move through it. I think you should look to your program because that's what we're going to be following as I go through each and every one of our 38 different economic development initiatives. One of the things we learned when we first started with economic development is that you cannot have economic development without community development. You cannot have community development without educational development. They all must move forward if we're going to have a strong community. And standing here is, I would say that when the next chapter, no, the next book of Littleton history is written, this building will be one of the most successful chapters as to how it came about. As Neil has said, there's been so many different partners that made this work. Joe Bador reached out to Senator Gregg, got us $500,000 for it. The town voted to allocate 15 Mile Falls money, about $532,000 for the renovation. The taxpayers also stepped up and spent $500,000 for it. Under the leadership of Steve Kelly and Joe Bador, they worked on it diligently to get the best bang for the buck for that. So you're looking at $1.5 million, a little bit over, of capital investment for the initial phase. You then are looking over here at the Chamber and the work they did. The Chamber, in addition to trying to promote our economy in a very tough economic climate, undertook to develop and have a permanent home for the Chamber here within this building, not only for them, but to also help manage this space. And that is a tremendous investment, both time-wise and money-wise. The Historical Society, if you have not been downstairs, please go down there. Many of you probably never had the opportunity to see it before, and that's probably just as well. It was a dirt floor except for where the boiler was. What has happened with that downstairs space is a Historical Society venue that any community in America would be happy to have, and God bless us that we have enough history to cover it. So this is a truly success story for Littleton. It's a traditional one where Littleton always works best when we have a choir rather than a solo act, and that's what's reflected here, and we've got many more steps to go. The first business on is the downtown area. As Chad said, one of our major goals when we started the Economic Development Task Force was a renovation of our downtown area. In 1992, we had 17 vacancies. Interesting enough, the first economic luncheon was the third year of a recession. This meeting is the third year of the recession that we've been in. If you look to the strength of our Main Street now compared to what it was then, all of our collective efforts has made it stronger so that it can survive the tough economic times. First one is Mill River Furniture. At Skip and Debbie Gray, between acquisition and renovation, they put over $400,000 into that spot. That building has had a varied history from Jeremiah's to the Galleon to Hall Cross Motors to Deacon's Bench. It has been many different things, but I think it's safe to say that with the newest siding that they put on, the building has never looked better. So Skip and Debbie Gray have stepped up to make a building that had deteriorated into a real building we all can take pride in. Lucky's Mattress Sale, that in less than 1 year has had 2 locations. Its first location was over here in the Solomon Block. That's owned by Nick and Ashley Bonaconti. They have been so happy. They live in Lindenville. They've been so happy with the business they've had here in Littleton that they've expanded into the downstairs bottom space of the Union Block building in brand-new space that's been renovated. So please stop in to see them. The Christian Bookstore, that's owned by Linda Gadwa. That is, again, also in the Union Block. That is a business that had been down on Route 302, relocated to Main Street, and is, again, one of the key things for economic development, especially on the retail end, is to give people as many different reasons to come to Littleton. Don't have, I mean, you're going to have some duplication, and that's not bad to give people choice, but the more reasons you can give people to come, the better off, and a Christian bookstore certainly helps us in that way. The Time to Consign is another business that relocated down to the Meadow on Main Street. That's Janice and John Morella. If you haven't gone in there, they have laid out a consignment store that is first class and is a credit to their entrepreneurship and meets the needs of many families in these tough economic times, and also fills a space that had been vacant for many years. Littleton 47 to 51, that's actually the Union Block building, and that is owned by a gentleman by the name of Doug Frizzell. This is the second building that Doug has renovated, purchased and renovated on Main Street. The first one was the Cooney Block that he did, and actually that's where Mill Street Furniture moved out. That was that building, and if you haven't been through that, it is an exceptional one. Doug invested a tremendous amount of money in the Union Block, brought it up to standards for fire codes, and again, we have a building that had been underutilized and is now completely being utilized. Many of you may not know, but in the middle of basically the bowels of the building, we have a software company. It's called Mojo Selling Solutions. There are 15 people that are working in there. It's owned by a gentleman by the name of Davis Mangold, and it's a addition. Whoever thought that we'd become the Silicon Valley of the Northern New Hampshire, but it's happening. Granite State College has taken another spot in the Union Block building. That's great that we have education on Main Street. That is something that many communities are doing to, again, give different reasons for people to come forward. The Roundsville building, that is besides the Deacon's Bench building. That building has not had local ownership for, golly, about 40 years. It's now been purchased by Jessica and Scott Dane, who own Mordam Honda. They purchased it and then plan on renovating it. Why is that important? Well, that's probably the building that was in the worst shape, is in the worst shape. It's great to have it back in local ownership. It'll be spruced up and it'll be going back because it is a historic building, but we now need it to be a dramatically improved building, both safety-wise and aesthetic. Fastenal is the next one. They had been down on the Meadow and they relocated to the Dunkin' Donuts building. They are another industrial supply business. Again, a different type of business that brings people to downtown Littleton, and that's very important. They had been down in the shopping center across from the Industrial Park Road, but that's sort of like the Maytag Repair Center. There's not a lot of activity going on down there, so they moved up to where there's more activity, and so far it's looking good. The next thing we have is, the next page is Family Furniture. That's owned by the Abbott family, which are very knowledgeable and successful individuals that have been in the furniture business in both northern Vermont. I think they've had stores in Newport. They have a store in Lancaster. The Abbott family knows the furniture business. They've come here and they've done that. And what they've also done is take the old Butson supermarket building and fully complete it for the first time since Butson's moved out. There are 3 tenants in there. It almost seems like we get one a year. Tractor Supply moved in and has used a lot of the space, and obviously the VA clinic relocated from the hospital. So there are 3 separate uses, all different and distinct, that are using the Butson complex, and revitalization of existing structures are so important rather than just building new ones all the time, and that's been a success. Hey, how about the McDonald's we have? I never thought we would see a new McDonald's, and especially one as avant-garde as that one. It is a McDonald's that I think any community would be surprised to have in it, but it certainly is a McDonald's that is different. It's a little different personality than the traditional McDonald's, but again, it was an investment on 1.2 acres. In addition to that McDonald's, there's about another 8.5 acres of property on the old Continental 93 property that will be used for further development. And that's exciting because that is a prime location coming off the interstate, and other businesses. I know my wife is hoping that it'll be a Olive Garden along with probably half the women in Littleton. So actually my daughter too. But anyways, hopefully that will be developed over the period. Now, why is properties available for development important? Towns that survive are ones that handle the bad times and prepare for the good times. And one of the most important things to have is to have areas that are ready with water, sewer, electricity, and land available for development so that when other entities or other businesses want to come and become part of our community, we're ready for them. And that's a key one. La Bonneville, that's a business that's been located in Gorham for many years. Again, a different type of business. The product that they sell is different than what other businesses do in the area, and they're in a great additional mix down to what was the old bowling alley building that has been reutilized for many different purposes. We now have Second Chance Animal Rescue. That is down on the Lisbon Road. We literally have the cats and dogs covered. They're even now part of our economic development team. We have the Above the Notch Humane Society, which takes care of the dogs, and the Second Chance Animal Rescue that takes care of the cats. Now, my wife and I have been married for 30 years. We've had 2 dogs, both dogs that we've got from Pound. So they do great work. They transfer dogs to homes and to people, and they add to the quality of our community. The next thing we have is Emerson Driving School. When Gary Mason retired, and after a 30-plus year of doing phenomenal driving ed instruction for the school district, that work has been subbed out, and Emerson Driving School is a driving school for not only the high school students, but probably some of us all could take a little upgrade in that area. So it's great to have them down in the meadow, and again, something that's different that brings people to Littleton. Housing and real estate, obviously, we've had a tough economic go at it. Values are down by about 20%. That's nothing normal. That's what happens when you have a downturn in your economy, especially when there's no little real estate activities. However, we've had a couple businesses that have wanted to become part of Littleton because they see the potential. Remac Northern Edge Realty, which is out of Berlin, has opened up an office here, and they seem to be doing very well. They are on West Main Street, and they are a full-service real estate agency that is, again, providing services and is promoting Littleton through their activities. Ahead Town and Country. Now, I called up David Wood today to get the inside poop on that. When I talked to him a year ago, the project, which is the first phase, was about $5.5 million, but by the time David got done, it was up to $6.4 million. That was 25 units. They're all rented. Starting in the spring, there'll be another 25 units that will be built, and that's another $5.5 million project for a total project of $11.9 million. Now, the 25 that are going to be built are 22 new units and 3 units on an existing structure property that they own on Eli Street that is going to be torn down and rebuilt. So that they'll be helping all over. Those of you who remember, and hopefully we'll put it in our rearview mirror sooner rather than later, the building that was replaced on Cottage Street was one of the 2 buildings, maybe 3, that if you were really paying attention, you would be concerned about if a fire hit. One of them was this town building. We now have a wonderful sprinkler system in for the first time since it's been 1894. We have a sprinkler system. The building that was there was been torn down, thank goodness. It was a death trap waiting to happen, and it has been replaced by a dramatically improved structure that's providing much better housing, quality housing. So getting rid of the old building and adding the new was kind of a 2-for-1. So David has done a great job. In addition, he wanted to know that if any of you are looking for roommates, especially of the elderly variety, David is going to be renovating. He's got the money, approximately around $10 million, to renovate housing in Lisbon at the Lisbon Inn, the McKee Inn in Lancaster, and the Opera Block in Haverhill. However, he needs to be able to move some of the people there to renovate what he wants to do. So David said his number is 444-1377. If any of you are looking for roommates over the winter, and winters get long here, but he does need some help in that area. Caldwell Banker, Linwood Real Estate, King Covey and Chris Covey right here in the front row, and they've always been regular attendees at the lunch, at the festivities, but they've sold their business to Tom Tremblay out of Lincoln. Again, another entrepreneur who wanted to be part of our business has come in, bought their business. They're staying on to make sure he doesn't screw things up, and they're going to be, again, a part of our community. Highland Croft Development, that's Dick Gould, the old Highland Croft property, which had been in decline for a period of time. That property is going to be developed, and again, one of the reasons it's important to it is that when our economy bounces back, that's going to be a prime development site for, again, development that will bring people to Littleton. Years ago, especially in 1992, we came as close to losing our retail economy as we could. I mean, with 17 vacancies on Main Street. And then once the Meadow was built up, people started complaining about traffic. And as I said to them, matter of fact, I think it was at this dais that I said, you know, we tried to have a retail economy without customers. That didn't work out so well. So now we're doing it with customers, and with customers comes traffic. So something that's an indication of a good problem. Many communities, I know I've heard people from Claremont talk, they can't wait to have a traffic jam down there, or other communities that want to have activity, which we have. LaHoot's apartment expansion. Herb LaHoot has been building and renovating different buildings. He's selling off some existing inventory and working on his property in Joe LaHoot Lane. That project, if it is able to work through all of the hurdles, will be about a $5 million project, and that's a substantial investment in our community. Now, it's listed as Cottage Street Plaza. That every time, and believe me, I'll tell Chad, I used to screw up a couple in the program myself, and Chad did this one. And I said, you know, Chad, I said, what's going on in Cottage Street Plaza? And the reason I was wondering was that my office is. I said, you know, am I being moved out? It is a place where you can multitask because you can get a will, a haircut, and a massage. And we haven't worked it out so it's simultaneous, but we're working on that. But anyways, what he was talking about was Cottage Park Professional Center, which is owned by Kevin O'Brien. Kevin has taken the old Bowker Barn building, put a new foundation underneath it. If you haven't been up there, go up behind that. He's expanded the area back there for future development. Again, it's so important to have sites that when the need develops, they're available, and Kevin has invested, and that property is ready for additional development and investment on Carter Street, which is great. Norton Pike facility, that property, Andy Smith and the Peabody Smith team found a buyer. They was a company that had a facility in Berlin that they outgrew. Their headquarters were in Concord, and they found someone. And what many people don't realize is that it's hard to sell a 90,000 square foot building that doesn't have a heating system in it. That building, because it had kilns in it, was heated by the processing, except for the office spot. So to be able to find somebody that could use that space without a heating system and move in was a great find for us. And that company, which primarily makes vaults for cemeteries, hopefully there'll not be a big demand over the next 6 months of that locally, but they are, and they're a regional business, and it's great to have them here. Okay, now we're going on to professional services. Jeff Merrill, who has been in business and has been over on Highland Avenue and on the corner of Highland Avenue and the Brook Road, has developed such a successful business that he's bought a brand new business on the Whitefield Road, and if you haven't gone by, it's like just a tremendous set of activity, and it's great to see a local young man go out, start his own business, and be successful, plus do it in a very nice location. ARC Mechanical, they're a company out of Bradford, Vermont. My dad used to be in the mechanical contracting business, and it's great to have them back, someone that provides that skills here, because again, they have expertise that we didn't have. Now that we have them here, that is something that again, hopefully they can grow more jobs locally. No Time to Cook, owned by Dina Doobie. Many of you have probably gone to parties or soirees where she has provided the catering. She does an outstanding job, and again, local entrepreneurship at work, creating your own job, which is, as many people know, is what has to happen in the North Country. Stillwater's Run Deep Kayaking, that's owned by a woman by the name of Margie Anderson. It's out of Monroe. Why is that important? Our economic future is going to be based upon who we can attract to our area. Always are looking for lifestyle tycoons, those who want to build a business at the same time live our lifestyle. If we could only find 5 more mated Sunmans, or I'll take 1, to build a business here, somebody who came here for their lifestyle and then built their business, raised their family, and as they say, the rest is history. So if they bring people here that fall in love with the area for kayaking or other reasons, then maybe they'll bring their entrepreneurial spirit with them. Next thing we have is Mike Claflin. Mike, longtime banker, a strong economic development leader in the community. Very few things he hasn't been involved in. He's now taken it to the next level, working with other investors, created Profile Capital LLC. We actually have our first venture capital company, which I think is exciting, because if we got a software company and we got a venture capital company, theoretically, we really are ready for the Silicon Valley. So Mike and his team hopefully will be finding investments for people, private equity investors, to invest in our community, in our area, and all the investment we can get would be great. Next we have is, onto the page, is community investment under school, which is a big subject. The big project going on is the junior high. That's a $10.3 million project. Approximately 85% of that is paid for by state funds. And we were facing a deadline. We had to get an affirmative vote by the community by March 31st. The school board did a phenomenal job of making a commitment to the taxpayer in tough economic times, where they said, if you support us, we will work hard to cover the bond costs. And they did it multiple ways. They promised that either through spending savings or revenue enhancements, they would cover $250,000 to $300,000 of the bond costs. The original bond cost first year was $420,000. Working together, we were able to get an interest-free bond, which dropped that down to $200,000, dropped the payment term from 20 years to 17 years. And so the school board, working on behalf of the taxpayer, is getting an enhanced facility for our community. And also, just another shout out to the school board, just was announced that their tax increase this year, one bad news, I guess the tax bills are going up Friday, but look under the school section, they only raised taxes $15,000 in this year, which was the goal that Steve Kelly and the Budget Committee asked them to do. Did a phenomenal job. The last thing is, there's been a new change in leadership, a transition. Dr. Gwen Blair at the Vocational Center, the Hugh J. Gallen Center, lives in Plymouth, and she had previously worked at the State Department of Education, and she knew how to work the system on our benefit, but she announced that she's retiring. The school district has just talked Al Smith into taking over her reins. Now, why is that important? Well, Al is the type of personality that he knows everyone in the educational area, and he's well liked by everyone. And one of the major goals he's going to do is going out and selling that new facility to the other 7 school districts that bring students here. There's no one that has an easier way about him than Al. He loves kids. He loves kids that have challenges. And with him in that position, taking over from the strong work that Gwen did, we're going to have a real strong facility, and it's something I think we can all be proud of. The Riverwalk, like many projects, sometimes they take a lot longer than they were anticipated. The first phase of the Riverwalk was the bridge. The second one was, the funding was received the second year right after that. It's only taken us about 10 years to get it done, but if you go beside the bike store, it's well underway, and it's a great activity. Reddington Street Bridge. The Reddington Street Bridge is again another project. In 1927, all 3 bridges were wiped out in the 27 flood. 2 of the bridges have already been replaced. The Bridge Street Bridge was moved down to the industrial park. Beacon Street Bridge, which serves Hitchner, was replaced, and the last one to be done was the Beacon Street Bridge. Now that got caught up in a little bit of bureaucracy, and we had to bring in the heavy hitters, Ray Burton, and he and Rusty Bulis provided great leadership, got that back on track, and it's gone out to bid, and it's going to be done, constructed by Winterset Construction, and that's great. Winterset's a Lindenville company. However, one of the owners lives in Littleton, and many of the people that work for it live in Littleton. So it is about as close it is probably the bridge company that's in our area that will help our economy. So we're keeping the money local. Highland Avenue, they got it under bridge. Don't ever say that again, Chad. That's a culvert. If it was a bridge, the state was going to make us spend $500,000 to $550,000. Isn't that right, Rusty? So we've called it a culvert, and it's been a culvert. In 2008, it failed. 2007, it failed. 2008, the community stepped up and allocated $50,000 to fix it. As bureaucracy took over, the state said it was going to cost us $500,000 to $550,000, and we dubbed around with it for the last couple of years and didn't amount to anything. Then George McNamara went to a selectmen's meeting in April and said, for God's sake, get your act together. Rusty Bulis again stepped up, went to the state, and got the state moving ahead using a plan that had been previously developed by Carl Hilgenberg. The plan was put together and was implemented. It was a true Littleton success story as far as people working together. Tom Considine and the water line were phenomenal, because the water line runs right underneath the culvert. It had to, obviously. couldn't be easy, but it did. Von Newton allowed where his business is to become a staging area. Dodge Contracting did a super job in late May, early August, and the culvert is behind, and when we had the high waters a month or so ago, the culvert improved tremendously. Main Street reconstruction, it's already been talked about. Northeast Excavator, Northeast Construction just did a phenomenal job on it. And two people that really sent the praises are that many times you hear about town or state employees not doing a good job. Well, John Seeley and Alan Heineth, the two on-site engineers, did a phenomenal job on that project, moving that along, getting it done. This was not an easy project. Jack Eames, would you agree? They found problems happened with it. They discovered things. I honestly thought maybe Jimmy Hoffa would have been found underneath there, but they found just about everything but that. Underneath that, and to keep that project moving along was a phenomenal success, and it will serve for years to come. Let's see, Littleton Regional Hospital. You're all invited next Thursday at 5:30 to celebrate the community celebration of the new $13 million expansion at Littleton Area Regional Hospital. It is a phenomenal addition, and it was done with so many local contractors, and it is something that's going to serve us for years. That's only phase one. Phase two, the board has already voted. Warren West confirmed today, $3.5 million, because the people who moved out of the old portion of the hospital into the new portion, they're going to renovate that, and then there will be another phase three, probably about the same amount of money the year after next. The hospital currently has a budget of $103 million. They spend, their salaries are $24 million. Going to Preston, correct me if I'm wrong, the multiplier is somewhere between 3 to 5 million, what the economic impact is, and that ain't small change. In addition, they have 422 full or part-time employees. So the hospital is our #1 employer and is a major economic engine for us, and their expansion helps us all. The boys and girls, Amanuset Community Health. They received a stimulus grant of about $2.6 million. If you drive by them, by their facility, you will see it's under construction. The entire facility is going to be renovated, and they'll be doubling their footprint from, I believe, around 5,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. And because we live in the North Country, something that's not new, Littleton has the 24th lowest family household income in the state. They meet the needs of low and moderate income people for health care needs. The needs are there, and they're doing a great job, and that expansion is going to help us all. The Boys and Girls Club of the North Country, Kevin O'Brien and his board have worked so hard for so many years, and I believe it's happened, but if it isn't, it will be happening real soon. They have purchased the building they're in right now, and so they will have a permanent final home for the Boys and Girls Club, which really helps students that may need a little bit more structure than others would do. 2 weeks ago. All right, Mark, did you close it? Mark closed it. Anyways, so it closed 2 weeks ago. That's a great thing. Now, tying in the Boys and Girls Club with 2 other educational facilities here in Littleton really shows that we are a community that when it comes to caring about our kids, we do more than just talk about it. Up the street here at the old hospital, Mount Eustace Commons, is the North Country Charter School. And that is a wonderful program for students who stub their toes, don't make it with a conventional high school, and need a second chance. Their success rate is phenomenal. If you've never gone to one of their graduations or seen it on Channel 2, it is truly just amazing. In addition, Littleton Academy, which is in the old SAU building, is also a on-site educational facility to again help students who may be struggling and need a little more structure. So we have 3 different activities here that are really helping kids who need it the most. The Badger Scholarship, speaking of kids, this is a great story. How many of you know where Badger Street is? Okay, most of you do, okay? Well, that was developed. Before there was Rock Strain, there was Charles Badger. Charles Badger owned the Badger Farm. Well, the Badger Farm is now where Badger Street is. And before Rock did all his work in the 50s, right after World War II, Charles Badger started doing subdivisions and building the houses, did that. He also had a son named Fred. Now, Fred went to veterinarian school. And Fred had a sister by the name of Marguerite that helped put him through veterinarian school. Now, that's not where the story ends. Fred goes to New Jersey, has a very successful veterinarian practice, but he also ends up having, how can I say this, a skill in investing. And his skill is so much that he ends up getting a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, Fred Badger is the equivalent of Rich Gale in baseball, because if you're playing in the majors, you're at the New York Stock Exchange. Fred Badger was very successful, but he never forgot Littleton and never forgot his sister. He now has created, and they're in the process, and hopefully the money will be available for this year's scholarships, a $3.2 million scholarship fund for the youth of Littleton. It's being developed. They don't have all the criteria, obviously being need-based to a certain degree, but it's a great story of where Fred Badger never forgot Littleton, and it's named after his sister, Marguerite. So it's a great story for our kids that anyone, regardless of your economic circumstances, is going to have a leg up to go on and further your education, and I think that's a great selling point to tell our kids. Littleton Area Historical Society, again, please go down and visit. They were, I don't know, they were like traveling, like the traveling show. They kept having to move from one location to another. They were almost, I'm not quite sure how to do it, but they are now finally in their permanent home. They are so proud of the space they have, and they have so many displays that, so please visit and please support them, because, you know, it's primarily a volunteer group, and there's not a lot of them, but if you get a check, help them out. If you can, as Neil said, volunteer, that'd also be great. Now, the Littleton Area Chamber of Commerce, I think, as you can see by all of you coming here, the Chamber of Commerce has been a true leading light in a tough economic climate. The last time we were... Tomorrow at noontime at Remick Park, we have a special opportunity for the community to come together. Littleton, I don't know how you can phrase this, but one person during the Vietnam War. He could have been much worse, but the one person we did lose was too many. His name was Yvonne Peanut Gerard. His family came from Quaticook. They came down to first living in Gilman, then in Dalton, and eventually coming here to Littleton. He died in, they moved on to Pleasant Street, just down from Remick Park in 1959. And he entered, after graduating high school in 1968, he joined the Marines, and he was killed in May of 1969. He was 20 years old. But Peanut was a small guy, but I use the example, people said, what was he like? And he was, I'd always describe Peanut as if he was like Mighty Mouse. He wasn't a superhero, but he had that level of energy. And Peanut, tomorrow we're having a dedication ceremony because the skating rink is being named in his honor. Because if Peanut wasn't with his longtime girlfriend, he was skating at the park. So if you can make it, the park commissioners have been very generous in working with the VFW and the Gerard family for this dedication, and I hope everyone will show up, because Peanut, many times we have memorials about the death of someone. Tomorrow we're going to celebrate Peanut's life, because he was a special person that paid the ultimate price for all of us so we could be here today, and it gives us a chance to say thank you. Well, I don't know how much time I took, but hopefully I got through it. So now, the next thing I've been asked to do is I know what it is. It's the Business Leader of the Year Award. This award was originally created to recognize individuals who contributed to our business climate, our economy, who would not fall within the four corners of, say, a Citizen of the Year Award. This allowed individuals who were not residents of Littleton to be recognized for their contributions. It didn't disqualify somebody from Littleton, but it was also an opportunity to expand the thank you list. Our chamber has for many, many years given Citizen of the Year Award, and everyone that's won has richly deserved it. But this gave us an opportunity to add a little bit more. In 2003, it went to Carol Murray, who was the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation and was so helpful to us in many ways. In 2004, it went to Dick Hamilton. He was known as Mr. Tourism throughout the state, and Dick also was very helpful, especially in the creation of the Littleton Main Street as far as getting us focused on what our strengths were. And he basically told us that our strengths were two things. Number one, we had the last intact Main Street, northern New Hampshire, and that's what the tourists expect to see. And number two, that we had a river that went parallel to it, and most communities don't have it. So Dick was so instrumental. The number 2005, Noreen Williams, we talked about Amanuset Community Health. She literally brought that organization from the ground floor up, and it's now getting stronger and better, and Noreen was such a, has been and was continuing to be a strong leader in healthcare and serving the community. In 2006, we had a chance to thank Ray Burton for everything that he's done. He continues to do it. Many people said, why did you thank Ray Burton for economic development? Well, just about anything that has to do with the state, which unfortunately is more and more every year and every day, we need Ray Burton to be our advocate down there. It just would be scary to think of what we would be like if Ray wasn't there as our voice. We then recognized Andy Smith. Andy is a longtime real estate and economic development leader involved in the Rotary and so many different things, and has been just a leading light in selling Littleton. In 2008, Steve Kelly, a longtime business leader here, developed a business that had Littleton as the headquarters, had 7 Napa stores throughout the region, and yet chairman of the budget committee, involved in hockey, just a very, very giving person. And then last year, Mike Claflin and Jeff Wheeler won for their outstanding work for the Littleton Co-op. This year, the committee, what you're always trying to do is, how do you match a individual with the times? And that's one of the challenges you have, because in past years we were thanking people for what they did during good times. Well, it became pretty clear to the committee that worked on selecting them that this was a particular year where we should thank an individual whose spine had steel in it, who was here through thick and thin, whose investment in our community never wavered, who was always there reinvesting into the community, reinvesting into his employees, reinvesting into it regardless of what the economic circumstances. That this was a year to say, God, where would we be if he wasn't here? Where would we be if this person hadn't hung in there? And we were fortunate, and so we got to, this year, break the rules a little bit, but I guess that's okay. We had 2 individuals that qualified under that. So we're breaking the rules this year because we think that there are 2 individuals that fit the criteria of the times, of being here for during the tough days, not the glory days. Both individuals were also the type that were in the background. They were not ones that were out front. They were supportive, but they had a lower profile. One of them, the worst thing you could do is ask him to speak up here. He'd break into hives and almost collapse. The other one, he reminds me of the story of Calvin Coolidge. A woman came up to him and said, I bet my friend that I could get you to say 3 words. He said, you lose. This individual is very similar for he doesn't waste a lot of words. So tonight, the Business Leader of the Year Award is going to 2 individuals, which when you hear it, you'll know exactly what I mean. John Eames, who has been investing in Littleton, building off his family's investments since 1972. The Kilden Block, the Solomon Block, the Opera House, Gate, reinvesting in the theater. Over and over, I could spend all day, I know you don't want me to, talking about how John Byron Eames has reinvested in our community and has been a rock of Gibraltar during tough economic times. Never was a short buck artist, never was looking for the short buck, continually reinvested in the community, and just think where we would be if John Byron Eames had not been here, loved Littleton, and with his full family support, continued to reinvest in our community. It is the linchpin of our downtown area has been the investments that he's made. Our second winner, somebody that got a little later start than John did. came to Littleton in 1991. He was always from the area, but as far as his investment in the area, he took over a dealership that was in disarray, closed or closed on, whatever you want to talk about it, and built it from the ashes. He not only built it, but he tore it down and built it again. Ronnie Lister. Ronnie Lister, since 1991, has been a Rock of Gibraltar in a tough business. The automotive business is not the place for the unwary. It's a tough business to be in, and Ronnie has been there through thick and thin. Time and time again, he found ways to cut expenses so he didn't have to lay off employees. Time and time again, he was creative in building a bigger business so that people's positions could be saved because they were multitasking and serving multi-purposes. Now, Ronnie is, I know somebody had to do it, but he's on vacation in Mexico. So Ronnie could not be here, but I would like Dwayne Cody representing Ronnie. Dwayne? And John Byrie needs to come up, each to say a few words.
The last time I spoke before a group was when I had my last jury trial. That was a long time ago. It's very hard to follow up somebody like Brian. I've known him a long time, and if you ever need a good lawyer, he's the man. I should know I hired him as the first assistant county attorney. Let's see, what am I going to say? I guess one thing I could say is that I'm not sure I should be up here because I didn't have a very good beginning. When I was born, they said that I was so ugly that the doctor slapped my mother. And then when I became a youngster here in town and would roam around the streets, I was so unpopular that even my imaginary friend would play with kids across the street. Then I became an adult. We all have to do that. And when I became an adult, they said that I was slow, that it would take me an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. But the reason I'm up here is not for what I've done, but what people have done before me, and I'm speaking mainly of my mother and my father. My father was born in 1891, and I see here 1894, so he came even before this building, I guess. And he chose Littleton in the 1920s, and in 1926 he started up Ames Realty Company, and I believe that it's still existing. I think the oldest real estate company in the North Country and perhaps even in the state. He was also a state senator and was instrumental in getting the Cog Railway up on Cannon Mountain. But he had a bad heart, and unfortunately he died in 1951. That was a long time ago, so there's not too many people in this room that remember him. I was 10 when he died, and Jerry was 8. The unfortunate part about that was that my mother was around 39 years old, and she was left with a lot of property, with a lot of mortgages. If you think we're living through tough times today, you should have been back there in 1951, especially if you were in the movie theater business when television was just coming in. In our family, we thought that was going to mean that every home was going to have a mini movie theater, and we were very worried about that. Well, as things turned out, it wasn't the threat that we thought it was going to be. But She could have lost all of our properties. She had no business experience whatsoever. She was a registered nurse. And the old-timers here will probably remember that they would see her maybe at Thayer's Hotel working, at the theater at night, renting apartments out, doing the bookkeeping, cleaning, whatever. I don't think she ever had a bookkeeper or a secretary. So she passed away in 2000, and so then it came to myself and my fabulous brother. And you all know Jerry, and you know that we're some different. And they say about me that I can brighten up a room by leaving it. They say about Jerry, he can brighten up a room by coming into it. And I think that sums it up. Now, the next generation is here, and I'm speaking about Jack, here with his wonderful family, Vicki, and Ethan, and Morgan, and Carson. That's the new generation. Jack, as some of you might know, went to West Point. Fine education. What I liked about it was free. I like that word. I also like the fact that he chose to come back here. He could have gone anywhere with his education, his intellect, personality, but he chose to come back here. It took a lot of pressure off Jerry and myself. So that's the new generation. I think I've said all that I can say. I'm reminded of an old, there's an old saying, I think it's my saying, that you should not speak anymore unless you can improve upon silence. I cannot. Thank you.
Ronnie's obviously on vacation. I prepared a little something on his behalf, so please bear with me. First of all, I'd like all of you to know that Ronnie apologizes to everyone for not being able to attend today's award presentation. For over 2 years, he hadn't taken a vacation, so finally he broke down 5 months ago and he made plans for a trip to Mexico, which is where he is right now. I did just speak with him just a few minutes before this gathering, and he asked me to relay a couple of things to everyone. Muchos gracias. Oh, and más cerveza, por favor. So Ronnie traded in his necktie, phone calls, and emails for suntan oil, a Speedo, and David Brinkley's A Memoir. When I realized the conflict between being presented this award and taking Ronnie's vacation, I had no choice but to reveal the honor bestowed upon him. His reaction was predictable. Who the hell nominated me? After reflecting about the significance of the award, he made it clear how humbled and honored he really was. He'd like to thank all who nominated him and everyone on the committee as well. On the rare occasion that Ronnie speaks in front of a crowd, he surely is a man of few words. Always striving to lead by example, I will honor his legacy and do the same here myself today. Of course, our many years of working together has provided me with voluptuous, real-world examples of moments that sum up his personality to a T. Thankfully, for everyone attending this afternoon's event, I have chosen to exclude every single one of them. Okay, so who is Ronnie Lister? He is an extremely generous, selfless, dedicated, detail-oriented visionary who is a bit of a risk-taker at times and someone who is extremely committed to his business, his employees, and our community at large. As this year's theme is investing in the future, I know I speak for Ronnie when I say that he will not waver in his commitment to his businesses, Littleton Chevrolet, Crosstown Motors, and the Auto Saver Group, and as time moves forward,
We will strive to not simply survive, but we will instead find a way to thrive. Thank you all once again. Ronnie truly appreciates being recognized by all of you whom he respects himself. Thank you.
I want to thank Chad for providing me time to speak today, and especially for letting me have the last word over Brian. I'm about to make several exciting announcements, perhaps even, Jerry, fabulous announcements, on behalf of the Francis Marion Heald Trust. I'm afraid that this will take a bit longer than the customary 1 to 2 minutes allocated to speakers at this event. Compared to Brian, I'm afraid that I'm not a fast-talking lawyer. If you will bear with me, I can assure you that the additional time will be well spent. Douglas mentioned the other trustee of France Trust, and I wanted to choose a time and place to make these announcements that would be most appropriate to Fran's memory, her powerful legacy, and her cherished link to Littleton's past history. The Opera House seemed the ideal location, and this celebration seemed to fit with Fran's enjoyment of a good party, particularly one where she was the center of attention. Most Littleton area residents fondly remember Fran, who died last year on October 26, just 9 days short of her 101st birthday. Many people spend a great deal of time accumulating wealth. In her later years, Fran began what Andrew Carnegie described as the infinitely more serious and difficult task of wise distribution. In a few moments, Fran's wise distribution will be known. As a backdrop to what Fran has provided in her trust, and for the benefit of those who did not have the honor and pleasure of knowing Frances Marion Heald personally, a brief history of her remarkable life is in order. Much of it taken from the remembrance written by Duncan McKee, who was proud to have counted Fran as a good friend. Born in the family home at the corner of Grove Street and Highland Avenue in Littleton on November 4, 1908, Frances Marion Heald was the second daughter of lawyer and then Judge Harry Lewis Heald and Mary Mooney Heald, a nurse. Fran grew up in Littleton and was a member of Littleton High School's graduating class of 1926. Following her graduation from high school, she went on to study public health and social work, graduating magna cum laude from Tufts University in 1930. Fran continued her studies, earning a master's degree in social work from Simmons College and a Master of Science in Hygiene from Harvard University. For the next 40 years, she pioneered work in the emerging fields of public health, child welfare, and social work. In 1947, following 16 years of practicing social work in Boston, Fran became a social work supervisor and director of the Medical Social Training Project in the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. By the time of her retirement, Fran was serving as the director of the daycare licensing program in Massachusetts and serving as president of the Massachusetts Conference on Social Welfare. She was listed for many years in Who's Who of American Women and was the recipient of a citation for distinguished service from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Following her retirement in 1971, Fran returned to Littleton to live. and joined forces with her older sister Mary and their father in founding and organizing the Littleton Area Historical Society. Later, Fran and Mary were instrumental in establishing the museum room at the Littleton Public Library, and Fran was co-chair of the Town History Committee during the nation's bicentennial in 1976. During her retirement, Fran enjoyed traveling extensively in Europe with her sister. Fran was very active in the community and served for many years on the Littleton Budget Committee. She was also deeply involved with the Littleton Hospital Auxiliary, All Saints Episcopal Church, and the Littleton Community House, where the main meeting room is dedicated to her family. Judge Heald was instrumental in establishing the community house for the town. She also served as treasurer of the library trustees and was active with the colonial and garden clubs. In 1978, Fran and her sister shared the honor of being chosen as Littleton's Citizens of the Year, the first time that the honor had been bestowed on more than one person. Between 1980 and 1984, Fran worked with Courier editor Jack Colby, Mary Heald, before her death in 1982, and Reginald Colby in compiling and updating the history of Littleton, which was published in 1984 to coincide with Littleton's bicentennial. Whenever there was any research to be done for any aspect of Littleton history, Fran was the one to ask. Duncan McKee recalled on many occasions when he was writing feature articles dealing with aspects of Littleton history, Fran was always a ready and reliable source. Fran's clear recollection of the evening of November 11, 1918, when news of the armistice ending World War I came to Littleton, is particularly appropriate to this day and this location. Consider Fran's account in connection with an article on the history of Veterans Day of what took place right here, almost to the day, 92 years ago. Father drove us in the carriage to the front of the Opera House, where a large crowd had gathered to celebrate the end of the war. There was a huge crowd of people gathered there, and people were singing patriotic songs, and some people burned an effigy of the Kaiser. 2 weeks ago, Lou Feldstein, former president of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, gave a very interesting presentation on the importance of social connections at North Country Investment Corporation's annual meeting at the Mount Washington Hotel. The central premise of his talk was that people do better together when they live in a community where they are connected with many other people. He discussed compelling recent research demonstrating that when people are connected to one another within a community, improved health, higher educational achievement, lower crime rates, and a myriad of other positive benefits result. The surprising thing is that Fran Heald had this all figured out a long time ago. On the occasion of her 100th birthday, she attributed her long life to keeping busy, having a purpose, and being involved in community life. Last year, Karen Kazarian of Pollyanna of Littleton fondly remembered having shared Fran's visit in 2007 with a group of fifth graders and their parents at Mildred Lakeway Elementary School. I was charmed by her visit, Kazarian said. It was absolutely fascinating to watch the interest she showed the students and that the students showed her. She was absolutely aware that everything that was happening right then was the history of the future. That was a very special moment in time. Fran started her philanthropic work several years ago by providing financial support for the education of Littleton's young people. Fran provided a gift of $100,000 to fund a scholarship with the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation to make it possible for Littleton students to dream big and as a way to give back to the community that in her youth had helped her realize her dreams. Frances Heald knew firsthand the impact of a scholarship grant. Fran had entered Tufts University in 1926 to study economics and sociology with the help of a $300 scholarship from the John Pearson Trust. In those days, the yearly tuition at Tufts cost $600. And her parents scraped together every penny they could find to send Fran and her sister Mary off to college. The Mary E. Heald and Frances M. Heald Educational Fund that Fran established provides assistance to Littleton High School graduates who are continuing their education in history, teaching, social work, pre-law, or community service. Reflecting on life in Littleton and her reasons for establishing the scholarship, Fran said, "Families need a boost. We wanted to create a scholarship to be a living memento in future years and know that we could help people from a small town reach their goals." Several people were closely involved in assisting Fran in establishing her trust and in assisting her with the investments that are the source of monies that will be distributed momentarily. They need to be recognized and thanked. The first is Timothy J. Vaughn, formerly an attorney with our firm and now a New Hampshire Superior Court Justice. Tim worked with Fran in setting up her trust and revising it over several years consistent with Fran's wishes. Francis Collins, formerly with the investment firm of A.G. Edwards in St. Johnsbury, assisted Fran for many years, acting as her financial advisor and managing her investments until his retirement. Kenneth Kinder, who's over here, I'd ask him to stand up, but he doesn't really need to. Ken worked with Francis Collins in the A.G. Edwards St. Johnsbury office, succeeding him in running that office upon Fran Collins' retirement. Ken now runs the Kidder Financial Group, which is an affiliate of Stiefel Nicholas in St. Johnsbury. We are fortunate to have a choice of several excellent investment advisors in our area. Having worked with him, I can heartily recommend Ken Kinder and want to publicly thank him and Francis Collins for their stewardship of Fran's investments. With a judge for a father and a nurse for a mother, Frances Heald grew up with a strong sense of community and the desire to help others. Fran viewed the monies that she had accumulated over her lifetime as a sacred trust that she was bound to administer for the good of the community. I'm going to ask trustees and representatives of various charitable organizations to come forward so that I can present checks from the Frances M. Heald Trust. These organizations would not be able to pursue their good works for the benefit of the Littleton community without the dedication of volunteers and unpaid trustees and directors. Fran was a champion of volunteerism, and she would want this occasion to be an opportunity for us to recognize and give thanks to those volunteers. David Waters and David Sunman, trustees of the New Hampshire Historical Society, please come forward. Under the terms of her trust, Frances M. Heald has directed that the sum of $50,000 be distributed to the New Hampshire Historical Society of Concord, New Hampshire, in memory of Mary E. Heald and Frances M. Heald. This sum is to be kept and invested at the discretion of the directors. There shall be no invasion of principal. The net income only shall be used and expended for the collection and care of historical material and for general purposes of said society.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The checks I'm... The checks I'm going to hand out are not signed. And the reason for that is that we have some receipts that we're going to need to have signed. So if the recipients can see me and Ashley, Attorney Garrison, afterwards, we'll make sure you get a signature on it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Could Daniel Cullen, President, and Wayne Ruggles, Treasurer of the Littleton Area Historical Society, please come forward? Fran was a founder, leader, and meticulous guardian of the facts and artifacts of the Littleton Historical Society. She has directed that the sum of $75,000 be distributed to the Littleton Area Historical Society, a voluntary nonprofit corporation having a principal place of business in Littleton, in memory of Mary E. Heald and Francis M. Heald, which sum shall be kept and invested at the discretion of the directors. There shall be no invasion of principal. The net income only shall be used and expended for the collection and care of historical material of the Littleton area. Could Jerry Serluco, Aaron Hennessy, and Carolyn Walco, board members of the North Country Home Health and Hospice Agency, please come forward. Fran was an early supporter and outspoken proponent of the need for the North Country Home Health Services. Fran has directed that the sum of $75,000 be distributed to the North Country Community Home Health Agency, Inc., or its successor, in memory of Mary E. Heald and Francis M. Heald. This sum shall be kept and invested at the discretion of the Board of Directors. There shall be no invasion of principal, and the net income only shall be used and expended for the general purposes of the agency and for home health work in the town of Littleton. I'd like to ask Jean Dickerman, Director of the Littleton Public Library, and Pamela Kavanaugh, Chair of the Library Board of Trustees, to come forward. Fran was a long-term supporter of the Littleton Public Library. A few years ago, she donated her cherished collection of Beatrix Potter figurines to the library. In her trust, Fran directed that the sum of $100,000 be distributed to the Littleton Public Library of Littleton, New Hampshire. This sum shall be kept and invested at the discretion of the trustees in a permanent fund known as the Mary E. and Francis M. Heald Memorial Fund. The net income only shall be used and expended at the discretion of the trustees for the maintenance of the historical collection and for the extension of historical resources. The trustees shall have no authority to invade the principal. Could Warren West, Chief Executive Officer of Littleton Regional Hospital, Sharon Sunman and Stephanie Moskal, co-directors of volunteers, please come forward. Fran Heald was a dedicated volunteer at the Littleton Regional Hospital. She has directed that the sum of $100,000 be distributed to the Littleton Hospital Association of Littleton, New Hampshire, in memory of Mary E. Mooney Heald, one of the original incorporators of Littleton Hospital. This fund shall be known as the Mary E. Mooney Heald Fund, and all sums therein shall be for the maintenance and development of the hospital volunteer program. There shall be no invasion of principal, and the net income only shall be used and expended for the purposes set forth herein. I'd like to ask Roxanne Bowker, President, and Janet Costa, Treasurer of the Littleton Community Center, to please come forward. Fran has provided that the sum of $200,000 be distributed to the Littleton Community Center of Littleton, New Hampshire, in memory of Harry Lewis Heald and Mary Mooney Heald, to be maintained in a separate fund and known as the Harry L. and Mary M. Heald Memorial Fund. Said sum to be kept and invested at the discretion of the trustees and directors, with the net income only to be used and expended for the general purposes and benefit of the Littleton Community Center. The trustees or directors shall have no authority to invade the principal. Could the Reverend Kurt C. Wiesner of All Saints Episcopal Church and Mel Brooks, trustee, please come forward? Frances Heald was a devoted member of All Saints Episcopal Church, having served on the Altar Guild. She has directed that the sum of $200,000 in memory of Mary E. Heald and Frances M. Heald be distributed to the All Saints Episcopal Church of Littleton, New Hampshire, to be known as the Mary E. Heald and Frances M. Heald Memorial Fund, to be invested at the discretion of the vestry. There shall be no invasion of principal, and the net income only shall be used and expended for the general purposes and benefit of the named beneficiary herein, including the parish house. We're almost done. Could I ask that the representatives of Littleton Regional Hospital, the Littleton Community Center, and the Littleton Public Library to please come back up? I would also like to ask Linda Gray, if she's here, who's the philanthropy advisor of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, Lakes and North Country Regions, and Kenneth R. Kinder, who serves on the board of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, North Country Region, to please join us up here. The final provision of the Frances M. Heald Trust provides as follows. The rest, residue, and remainder of my trust shall be divided into 5 equal shares. I direct my trustees to distribute said shares as follows. 1 share to the All Saints Episcopal Church for the same previously stated purposes and subject to the same previously stated restrictions. 1 share to the Littleton Hospital Association of Littleton, New Hampshire, for the same previously stated purposes and subject to the same previously stated restrictions. 1 share to the Littleton Community Center of Littleton, New Hampshire, for the same previously stated purposes and subject to the same previously stated restrictions. 1 share to the Littleton Public Library of Littleton, New Hampshire, for the same previously stated purposes and subject to the same previously stated restrictions. And 1 share to the Northern New Hampshire Foundation of Concord, New Hampshire, which is now known as the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, North Country Region, to be added to the Mary E. Heald and Francis M. Heald Educational Fund. The rest, residue, and remainder of the Francis M. Heald Trust is $1,880,700. Each of the 5 checks is in the amount of $376,140. Library. In preparing for today, I spent quite a bit of time trying to decide upon the best way to conclude. Throughout history, much has been written about the value of philanthropy by writers and learned men and women. Numerous inspiring quotations about the importance of charity could be shared. However, Fran's life well lived, and her sterling example should be sufficient inspiration to all of us. I did, however, find one quotation that held a particular appeal to me, no doubt because it is by a fellow Scot, Robert Louis Stevenson. More importantly, though, it captures how Fran approached her life and how she would want her legacy to be used to promote good works in the Littleton community that she so dearly loved. Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant. Thank you.
How do you follow that? Wow. What a night. I think it's some great investment in the community, some great news about the community. Hopefully you leave here tonight with a smile on your face as big as mine. I'm just ecstatic to hear all the great news and all the great community spirit that we have here tonight. In a few minutes, we'll break up. We will still be giving tours of the downtown as well as the Opera House. I'm very happy to be able to show off the Opera House tonight, so feel free to stick around and come see this beautiful building in all its glory. In closing, I'd like to thank our speakers for taking the time out of their days to be here. I'd like to thank our sponsors of the event for their continued support. Year after year, we get people really supporting this event and making it possible. I'd like to thank Bailiwicks and the co-op for their assistance with the great food and beverages tonight. They've done an outstanding job as usual. And please help yourself, there's plenty. I'd like to thank everyone here for showing your support of the event and your love of the community. I think all the faces I see here tonight, I think you all have the same love of this area as I do, and it's great to see the support of, although we changed the event, you're still following it and you still care. Have a great night.